I remember throwing my eyeglasses into the ocean off the Staten Island ferry one black night in a fit of drama and depression. I remember one very hot day, I put ice cubes in my aquarium and all the fish died. I remember closely examining the opening in the head of my cock once and how it reminded me of a goldfish's mouth. I remember when I thought that if you did anything bad, a policeman would put you in jail. I remember fantasies of being in jail and very monk-like in my cell, handwriting out a great novel. I remember at parties, after you've said all you can think of to say to a person, but there you both stand. I remember dreams of walking down the street and suddenly realizing I have no clothes on. I remember when all of a sudden, someone you know very well becomes a total stranger. I remember trying to visualize my mother and father actually fucking. I remember saying thank you in reply to thank you, and then the other person doesn't know what to say. I remember the shadows of feet under the cracks of doors and close-ups of doorknobs turning. I remember daydreams of committing suicide and of the letter I would leave behind. I remember visions of very big objects becoming very small, and of very small objects becoming very big. I remember that little jerk you give just before you fall asleep. I remember when I had a job cleaning out an old man's apartment who had died. Among his belongings was a very old photograph of a young boy pinned to an old pair of young boys' underwear. For many years, he was the choir director at church. I remember thinking once that flushing away pee might be a big waste. I remember thinking that pee is probably good for something, and that if one could just discover what it was good for, one could make a mint. I remember old people when I was very young. Their houses smelled funny.
Manson skateboarded across Canada in 11 months, raising over $14 million to fight heart disease. He covered over 5,000 miles, averaging about 100 miles per day. Manson says he wants to thank all who donated to his cause.
I remember wondering why God didn't use his powers more to end wars and stop polio and stuff like that. I remember that life was just as serious then as it is now. I remember solid red when you close your eyes to the sun. I remember how much in high school I wanted to be handsome and popular. I remember trying to imagine what I'd look like as an old man. I remember trying to visualize the travels of shit after you flush the toilet. I remember sneezing into my hand out in public, and then the problem of what to do with it. I remember regretting things I didn't do. I remember the only time I ever saw my mother cry. I was eating apricot pie. I remember eating alone in restaurants a lot because of some sort of perverse pleasure I don't want to think about right now because I still do it. I remember a boy. He worked in a store. I spent a fortune buying things from him I didn't want. Then one day he wasn't there anymore. I remember laundromats at night all lit up and nobody in them. I remember being disappointed in Europe that I didn't feel any different. I remember donuts and coffee stools, pasted over prices, and gray people. I remember the still mysterious association of Western music with greasy eggs in a diner on a Sunday morning. I remember sudden fantasy flashes of how many people all over the world are fucking at this very moment. I remember trying to realize how big the world really is. I remember trying to figure out what it's all about. Life. I remember not understanding how a baby could come out of such a small hole. I remember wondering how turtles do it. I remember wishing I knew then what I know now. I remember reading somewhere that the average cock is from 6 to 8 inches when erect, and grabbing for the nearest ruler. I remember trying to visualize what my insides looked like. I remember a story about a couple who owned a diner. The husband murdered the wife and ground her up in the hamburger meat. Then one day, a man was eating a hamburger at the diner and he came across a piece of her fingernail. That's how the husband got caught. I remember a dream of meeting a man made of very soft yellow cheese. And when I went to shake his hand, I just pulled his whole arm off.